next presenter is Sofia Akbar. Sofia Akbar is a Pakistani Muslim secondary maths teacher born and raised in Scotland. She was diagnosed in February of this year after fighting for her teenager's diagnosis. She was blamed for his difficult behaviors and for her own behaviors. She went out alone to seek her answers and met her tribe. She is now the director of her own property investment services business. And Sophia is going to talk about how, as a South Asian girl, she has always been mistaken as being rude, rebellious, and defiant. In other words, battamiz. In fact, she just wants to say that was her autistic brain seeking self efficacy and rejecting power and control in a culture that reeks of it. Sophia?
Hello, everybody. There you go. Yes, hi. I'm in my bedroom because it's my favorite place in the house. Actually, it's my bedroom. So I'm just going to share screen right now. I'll get my presentation up. Thank you for bearing with me there. Okay, so this is my autism. Thank you so much for organising this. It's the first of its kind I've ever heard of, and it's brilliant. And I hope you could do this every year. So thank you so much for organisers. So I have only just become very vocal about myself being autistic because I was waiting for my diagnosis. I mean, I had dropped plenty of hints for the past 2 years when I realised that I was. But I was just waiting for that confirmation on a piece of paper by a stranger, a psychiatrist, to say, yes, you're autistic. Because people would say to me, you don't look it, you don't sound it, you can't be autistic. Oh, everyone's autistic, a little bit autistic, all that nonsense. So I had to wait until I had this official, certificate of something that I already knew. In fact, I knew more than a psychiatrist. So since then, I have been very vocal because I believe representation, particularly with someone like me, is very, very important, not just for autistic people, but for non-autistic people to understand the various presentation of the condition. So I go ahead. So self-identity is really, really important, but not everybody has a luxury of having that identity. This was made by my daughter when she was 11, is Diamond, and it's my little logo for my blog. I'll give you a link for that later on. And it kind of defined me, different difficulties in my life, but also the positives of my life. Being autistic Muslim Scottish Pakistani female. And the title was called I Am Not Rude because that kind of sums up my life, like all the good and the bad parts of my life. I come across as being quite straightforward and blunt, which has got me to places that are good. However, it's also got me en route to divorce too. So, and I want to just explore all that, what we face as being, South Asian, and the barriers that we have. So growing up, I was very much in my own world. I had my own imaginary friends. I didn't really understand social cues, and I was very much the butt of all jokes within the family and at school. People seen me as being all the weird things, like clumsy, because you'd be like, nah, she's gonna how many times I have broke things, dropped things, bumped into things, cuts, falls, everything. I used to get told by my mother to stop asking questions. I must have been, all my school reports in primary school were Sofia is very chatty, but I was also very determined. So I wonder where all these words come from, right? I was very, very determined, but I was also extremely talkative. That was on my school reports from primary school. I've always been called bossy because I'm very strong-headed and I know what I want and I just plow through. I've also been called, angry as well, particularly in my teenage years. My mum remembers that, the broken doors, smashed things, cuts, falls, breaks, shouts, screams, tantrums, meltdowns, all of that happened mostly when I hit puberty afterwards. So I was like, from being a smiley little kid in primary to being somebody who had anger management problems, which then obviously affected my relationship with my mother and then my husband as well. I was having very often been called battamiz, as you would say in Punjabi, and bolna nahi aunda. She doesn't know how to talk. She's disrespectful to her elders. You don't know the status, like, of husband or mother or aunt or so, or community elder. You don't know how to talk to these kind of people because of the ranks. Whereas for me, everything is like logical. If you're talking BS, I will call it out, whoever you are, right? And you can imagine in our communities, in our society here, calling out BS with somebody who's older than you is not allowed. Like, watch who you're talking to, kind of thing, right? But for me, I never understood that. BS is BS, right? It doesn't matter who's saying it. And so that has caused a lot of problems for me. My mom never used to understand why I was so picky. Like, she was telling me last week how I would wear some clothes but not other clothes. I used to, for our like salin, our curries, I wouldn't eat gosh because it's too chewy. And I used to like sit like a standoff between me and my mother, like sitting there, I am not eating this. And my mother would be like, you're not leaving until you eat it. As it happens in our families, right? I've made this food, you're going to eat it. And I couldn't eat it. And I didn't know why. And so we had lots of standoffs. Or in our salad, in our curries, right? You have onion. Obviously, in every curry, you have onion. I used to pick them out. And she'd be like, I have no idea how this girl does this. How did she pick up the onions in her curries? Because my mum used to make sure that they're properly cooked. I still managed to do that. I was all these strange things that I would do that'd be awkward and difficult for my poor mum. And then also then going forward as a teenager and a young adult. Nobody would have ever guessed that the characteristics that I'm displaying are autistic, because there's no such concept. Because I could talk, I was hyperverbal, I was questioning, I was able, I managed to assimilate. I was just a difficult child who had behavior issues. That's it. That's all I was labeled as. Or just a rude person. That's it. No one thought there could be sensory issues. Imagine having the concept of sensory issues in our Asian culture. I don't think it's heard of unless you have learning difficulties. Then it'd be more accepting, but not otherwise. Not somebody who looks and talks like me. So what was happening in the background or inside, people couldn't see, was the brain working 100 miles per hour. So I believe I'm also ADHD, and also I have dyspraxia, which kind of relates to the bumps, trips, falls, and poor perceptions, spatial perceptions. And then the auditory sensory, oh my God, if I was to tell someone to put the volume down, I'd be called bossy. If my ears are hurting, but I talk loudly, Emika, yeah, she's just making it up. Why is she not, if she doesn't like noise, why is she talking so loudly? Or the communication. So I have been non-verbal at some points of my life because of shock, and I have not been able to communicate at all. Or there'll be times when I'm talking so fast and my mom has said, listen, I'm your mother, and I still can't understand what you're saying. The mumbling, not being able to talk clearly. I always thought, what else is this? Or when I used to copy words that I had learned from the TV. I learned Urdu from the TV. I didn't learn it otherwise. My mum speaks Punjabi and not Urdu. So I grew up with Bollywood films. Shah Rukh Khan, I had an obsession with Shah Rukh Khan growing up. And I used to pick up my language from there. So I can remember when I would be having an argument with my husband, I would pick and choose words that I've learned from an Urdu drama, and he'd be saying to me, you're not being authentic because you just picked up this line from somewhere. But for me, that explained how I was trying to communicate with him what the problem was, and I just found the words from somewhere else. And I used to find it very weird, like, okay, maybe I did copy it from there, but it does the job for me. Scripting is what it's called, right? So all these difficulties here about masking and being unsure of myself constantly. Hyper empathetic was one that, interestingly, I never got any empathy for. Like, when I used to cry like for days on end, my mom would say, "Koi mar gaya," right? The sarcasm, like, did someone die? Is that why you're crying so much? Or my husband would say these things, and sometimes it would upset me because there was a bad thing happening on the other side of the world, and I would be crying for 2 days, like for people who I don't even know. The pain of that used to like really consume me, and they'd be like, why are you crying? What are you on about? I'm not the one who's not empathetic, to be very honest. It's the people around me, the irony of it, right? So the disabling aspects, particularly in our Asian culture, right? If you have a disability, you're a liability, unfortunately, because it's extra effort and work for people around you. And it was a case of, you should fix yourself, you should grow out of it, you should change, right? Because you're the one with the problem, rather than looking at the surroundings and changing them. However, when I have seen all my good parts, I mean, no one ever attributed my positives to my autism. Why not? So I went back looking at my positives, my strengths. Nobody has ever actually looked at this and they say, yeah, okay, you've got good skills and you're a very good teacher, and you're accommodating, you're not judgmental, hyper focus. The word determined has been with me since primary school. These are all my autism. Why is it only my negative parts are my autism or my disability, and then everything else is just, oh yeah, but because that's just good things? I think we need to reframe, right? With the good comes the bad, right? So if I am non-verbal at some points in my life, though, you know what? I can understand other people's without them talking as well. I am determined, I am outspoken, I am driven to make change, because I believe the difficulties I have experienced in my life, they're there for a reason. And I have the abilities given to me by God so that I can make other people's difficulties easier, whether they're autistic or not, because I feel like I'm the lowest common denominator, that I have suffered the worst of the worst, could be worse to be honest. But my job is to do change, make change. I've always seen myself as being a change maker. So these attributes should also be in line with my autistic characteristics as well. Right, so you all have already heard about everyone saying everyone's a little bit autistic, right? What they don't understand is the whole normal curve here, right? What's normal? I mean, I asked that to my psychiatrist when he said, do you have normal facial expressions when people talk to you? And I said to him, what do you mean by that? What's normal? People, autistic traits are human traits because we are human, right? But they're more extreme. As my daughter says, I'm like a switch, on off. 1 minute I'm calm, I'm collected, I'm okay. The next minute I'm hyper and I'm outrageous. I'm just totally raging because I've just flipped. So this extreme behavior that's been displayed cannot be tolerated in our Asian communities because of the expectations on us, particularly, and here's I'm going to say it, particularly as female. Here's where the gender bias also comes in, because in our South Asian culture, we give too many allowances to the men. They can have tantrums, they can have demands, and the mothers, particularly the mothers, will accommodate them. When the girl, the daughter, the wife have demands, have needs, no. The women have to be accommodating. Doesn't matter. The women eat last. The women don't eat the meat. The men do. This is a kind of like in-laws in the culture that I have experienced, right? Where you only do things according to what the mother, the husband, or the mother-in-law has said, right? You don't have any agency. And for me, being autistic, that is the most important part. I have spent a lot of my life arguing with my husband, where's my agency, where's my own wujud? I am Sofia first, before I am a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister, anything else. I am Sofia first. And that is the problem my husband has had with me. Like, you want your freedom, go take it then. And now I'm saying thanks very much. I like my freedom here, because for me, I can only be a good mother, daughter, sister, friend, only when I am myself. I can't do that if these role models, these roles, that are framed by culture, not by me and my characteristics. They're obsolete, they're useless. So why is it in Asian society we have other people's perceptions and expectations forced on us, right? A wife is supposed to do like this. A daughter is supposed to do like this. A mother says, you're only a good daughter if you marry who I tell you to marry. Well, I didn't do that. I'm extremely oppositional. I can't help it. I regret it, to be very honest. However, it was that same agency. I want my agency. No, it's my life. I get to do what I say, right? So for her, it was, no, the only way you can be a good daughter is if you marry who I want. So everything else about me being a daughter was useless. For my husband, the only way you could be a good husband is if you give me blind obedience. No chance. You're not God. You're not going to get blind obedience. For being a mother as well, I was so in tune. My children are my special interest. I am so obsessed with these children, and I know them through and throughout, more than anybody else could ever. Yet people don't believe me about them when I'm telling them about their needs. So it needs to change. How? Well, the problem is because in our media, I mean, this is how people get educated. Like I said, I learned Urdu through my Bollywood movies and Urdu dramas. That's how we learn about the world. It is media. Now, if we have poor representation in media, how are we supposed to understand people in front of us? Right? So we have these stereotypes like my name's Khan, or characters who have line difficulties. But we don't have people who are, openly autistic. I mean, we have still in the West, we had the Rain Man or Sheridan stereotypes, right? I believe Doctor Who's autistic as well, to be very honest, and nobody will actually say that out loud. Or Elsa. I mean, there's so many Disney characters that have autistic characteristics, but they're never outed. So then the normal person, when I say normal, those who can't see autism, I would say, right, they don't see it. And therefore, I mean, the first the presentation that we had there was absolutely awesome because it was the everyday representation of autism that we see, and we don't recognize it because it's not out in our faces, except for people like you and me who are autistic and we see ourselves in it. Language is a big issue, right? So I'm working with Scottish Government, hopefully, to be looking at the language barriers that we have in different forms of explanations of autism. Now, our community from the East, even obviously in Africa as well, the Eastern world, we have a culture of oral communication where we have legacies, we have myths, we have folk tales. This is how we learn from generation to generation. Literacy rates are not that high, and that's okay because they have other strengths of speech. Folk history, yes, folk history is very much what dictates our culture. Well, why can't we write autism in there? Why not? We have things that are too technical, too medical. What's the point if people can only read very basic language, whether it's Tamil, Urdu, Punjabi, Arabic, Hindi, any other language? Okay, why can't we just have it basic? Why can't we have it visual representation? Why can't we have it in role modeling? And so that when we tell our parents, we're autistic, by the way, they'll say, oh, right, okay, and they start joining the dots. That's what needs to work on it. And I do implore all my audience here today is to go back to your circles and start working on, and hopefully together with Truhap as well and other organizations, on how we can collectively make resources worldwide to help people understand autism in a much more simpler way. So finally, I think I have taken over my time. A couple of links. I have recently done a short video on being an autistic mother with two of my friends from One Stop Shop Aberdeen. If you look on the Facebook page, that's their logo. It's online. Tonight at 5 o'clock BST in UK, I am online again for an hour discussing female autism from ethnic minority, and I've got 4 guests and my wonderful sister, who is like my communicator for the outside world. She'll be there with me and 4 other guests. And then my blog, which I only wrote another piece in a couple of days ago, and I started writing it last year. And it's about all the perspectives. And I talk about domestic abuse. I talk about being Pakistani. I talk about being female, being autistic, being an autistic mother, and the barriers and the difficulties that I face. So it's more an outlet for me, like a blog, like a journal. And the reason I write that is not just, it is for me for an outlet, because sometimes I have a block and I can't do my work and I have to write it out. And I recommend to all my brothers and sisters out there, write things out, do audio recordings, do videos, let it out, because the world is so overwhelming and unfair towards us. We need an outlet. This is my outlet here, and I hope I could help other people as well through my experiences and encourage other people to express themselves. So I'm Sofia, and it's me done talking. I will put the links on the chat as well in a bit. So thank you so much. Yeah, not despite of my autism. Yes, it has. If it wasn't for my autism, I would have given up on life 20 years ago. It is my determination to survive and thrive that has kept me alive till 36, and I have kept fighting, and my fight goes on. And I don't want to leave this world the way I left, the way I entered it. It has to change, and I believe that's my purpose in this world. Thank you so much for listening.